I'm going to go on to Module A now. If you want to just take a second, that's fine. But I'm going to keep going because we also I want to have our Q&A. It probably won't be halfway that we have our Q&A. That's all right. It might be a little bit after the halfway mark because we are going till 12:30. But yeah, I definitely want to get that Q&A in, so I'm going to push through. All right. Language, identity, and culture. I'm not sure how many of you guys have started this yet. I'm going to assume most of us haven't because you're going to look at it this term. This unit is my favorite in English Standard, so hopefully it's also yours as well. It's, I'm going to be honest, more fun than the Common Mod. So if you're someone that like despises English, hopefully that's kind of like inspiring and helps you push through. All right, so let's first understand it through the eyes of human experiences, okay? Human experience is something we're familiar with, so let's compare it. With text and human experiences, we had a conceptual focus on human experiences. We looked at one prescribed text, and we also had a related text. I know we're not going to use that anymore, but that's what we did. It was all based on understanding what it means to be human, all right? However, language, identity, and culture, our new module, we have a conceptual focus on identity and culture. Not so much just human experiences, we're now looking at people's identity and culture. It requires only one text, and it's all based on gaining new understandings from a variety of sources on identity and culture. Both of them engage in language forms and features, both of them examine common themes and values, and both of them explore humanity, okay? You can see how it's building on top of human experiences. We're looking at identity, which is something that we also touched on in human experiences, and culture, as we said before. All right, so the basics. This module will focus on the power of language to shape and reflect identity and culture. Sorry, I'm going to turn the aircon again. You'll study one prescribed text, which you'll be assessed on, alongside a range of other short texts that are relevant to what you are learning. All right, let's look at the rubric together. Language has the power to both reflect and shape individual and collective identity. That's paramount, and there's a reason why it's the first sentence. Don't overlook that, because in your analysis, you're going to need to look at how has your composer used language to shape and reflect identity and culture. Okay, I'll say that one more time because that's kind of the whole point of this module. How has your composer used language to shape and reflect identity and culture, okay? Or identity, individual identity, collective identity, culture, okay? Obviously, your composer might not only be helping to shape the culture and shape people's identities, they also might just be reflecting them, meaning showing it to us, not necessarily creating it or shaping it, but just showing us this is people's identity and this is people's culture. Okay, second sentence. In this module, students consider how their responses to written, spoken, audio, and visual text can shape their self-perception. Okay, so on one hand, we're looking at how language has shaped people's identity and culture. And then we're looking at, okay, once we respond to that and once we see that, it also shapes our self-perception. AKA, it shapes the way we view those people's identity and culture. All right, so it's twofold. That's your audience impact, that second one. How it's shaped you, how it's changed you. That's what you want to look at. They also consider the impact texts have on shaping a sense of identity for individuals and or communities. Through their responding and composing, students deepen their understanding of how language can be used to affirm, ignore, reveal, challenge, or disrupt prevailing assumptions and beliefs about themselves, individuals, and cultural groups. All right, so let's break it down. Language. What is language? A system of communication consisting of sounds, words, and grammar, or the system of communication used by people in a particular country or type to work. Now, that's really obvious. Hopefully, we all know that. There's nothing too... There's nothing too shocking about that. What does this mean in the context of Module A? Your micro techniques, so your literary devices, form, hopefully you remember that from when I spoke about that, and the non-written stuff as well. So maybe you're studying a film. Maybe you'll look at the facial expressions, the body language, the gestures, that's all a part of language as well, okay? So in the context of Module A, those are the kinds of things that can shape an identity or shape culture, and that's the stuff that you want to be looking at. What is identity? There's many different sources that you can look at for a definition of identity. Basically, it's what makes up a person or a people, okay? So there's individual or collective identity. It can be personal, familial, communal, generational, national, cultural, societal. Think about it. You have your own identity, but then that fits within your family identity and within your community's identity and within the Australian identity. Okay, so there are many different parts of identity. Authentic or inauthentic, is the idea of a self a construction? Do we choose who we are, or is it a result of our culture? That's something that you need to grapple with. Multidimensional, meaning that we don't just get our identity from one thing, like our gender or our nation. We get it from gender, nation, work, private, public, our relationships, our friendships, everything, okay? It's multidimensional. That's a really great buzzword to write down. If I were you, I would maybe just jot that down somewhere, because that's, again, that kind of language as a marker makes it sound really weird. But as a marker, when I read that, I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I want to hear. All right, what is culture? The ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or culture. Or society. Throughout Mod A, you will hear references to cultural perspectives, which refers to how particular groups connected by distinguishers such as class, nationhood, or certain experiences like immigration view the world. So, us in Australia, we view the world a particular way. Someone in Japan might view the world in a different way because of where they've grown up, okay? Females, males might view the world differently. Different world like New Age religions or traditional religions, or even just all religions, obviously view the world differently because they have their own understanding about things like the afterlife and spirituality and that kind of stuff, okay? So all those cultures shape a cultural perspective, all right? So the best way to think about it is the way us in Australia view something compared to us or them in America, or something like that. We have a cultural perspective. All right. Let's look at that statement that we looked at, how language can be used to do those different things about assumptions. What do we mean by prevailing assumptions or beliefs? Usually this is relating to stereotypes, okay, about certain identities and cultures. Unfortunately, stereotypes, they're really, really common. So you need to look at how stereotypes have been challenged by your composer. What has your composer done to challenge them, maybe affirm them, weaken them, strengthen them? That's really what you need to be answering, okay? So just to repeat that, how has your composer challenged, weakened, strengthened stereotypes, aka prevailing assumptions or beliefs? You must answer that. All right. Language has power. Language can be used as a tool to achieve certain goals. Think of how it can be used by governments and corporations, of course. Propaganda might seem like a historical relic, but with the expanded accessibility of world media, texts are being created with the intent to implant an idea in your head. Learning to understand how and why texts are constructed and how they could be manipulating you is hugely important. Okay. So this is a government-produced text evoking emotions in you that evoking emotions in you that will, if successful, influence your behavior. The humorous gesture creates an image of speeding drivers as inferior, discouraging the audience from speeding, aka abiding by the law. So here you can see the way language has been used to shape people's identity. People, especially men, are going to think, oh, that's a bit embarrassing. I'm not going to speed because I don't want to be seen that way. Yeah, that's shaping my identity. I'm changing my behavior. I'm changing who I am because of this language that I've been presented with, okay? Is this propaganda? Not really. But if you look at it in the definition of using language to sway people, it kind of is, okay? Not to sound completely strange and absurd. But in the definition of using language to sway people, it kind of is. Except it's a good one because no one wants people speeding. All right, so they investigate how textual forms and conventions, as well as language structures and features, are used to communicate information, ideas, values, and attitudes, which inform and influence perceptions of ourselves and other people in various cultural perspectives. So basically, what is this saying? We're using language to talk about people's values and attitudes relevant to their culture. So what are a culture's values and attitudes? How are they being expressed in this text through the use of language? How does that shape our or the reader's understanding of these cultures? Okay. All right. This is the really important part that I'm going to waffle on about for a long time because it is the most important thing. Remember how for the common module, I said that the why is the biggest thing lacking from those essays? This is what I'm about to say is the biggest thing lacking from Mod A essays. So we know that we need to talk about language, culture, and identity in your Mod A essay, right? We've went through that. We've spoken about what they are. We've spoken about the key rubric terms. Where does that all fit in though? Like these are really abstract terms. What do we actually need to say? Well, we need to find the link between them. So things like this are what our thesis will be about. How is language being used to shape an identity? How do those identities then form a culture? Or how is language being used to shape a culture? How within those culture, or how does that culture then shape different identities? You need to, bottom line is this, you need to find the link between these three and argue it in your essay. So in my text, my composer uses language to shape individual identities. However, as we zoom out, we see that these amalgamate into one solid structure of a culture, okay? That doesn't have to be your audience effect. That doesn't have to be your thesis. But what you do have to have, again, is that through line, that link between all three of these. If you don't have a clear link between all three of these in your essay, it's really hard to do well. That's what your marker wants. Your marker wants, okay, how have they applied the rubric to their text and found that link? Because don't forget, I think a lot of students think that your modules are really just all about your texts, and then you have to try and go back and try and see where it might fit in with the rubric. You're trying to prove your ideas about the rubric through your text. I think thinking about that in that way will help you much better. So don't think about it in the sense of how can I make rubrics back from my text. I have my own ideas about the rubric and I need to find proof of my own ideas in my text. Okay, think about it like that. Think, okay, I think that, language has been used to shape identities and that ultimately became a culture in my text. All right, let me find proof of that in my text. Now, is that really the case? Do you already have your ideas about these three things? Probably not. Will you most likely get it from your text? Yeah, you probably will. However, are you going to phrase it like that to your marker? No. You're going to say to your marker, these are my ideas, and yeah, my text is proof of my ideas. Okay, that's how you want it to sound. But bottom line, if you want to do well, you need to have that link between these three. Okay, that's why I've put Module A analysis in the center, because you need to have that link. I know I'm really going on about this, and I know I'm probably annoying you guys, but I really want to go on about it because just like the why for the common mod, this is what will help you achieve well in Module A. So let's go through this because I don't think I covered everything. As you approach your study of Module A, when you begin analyzing your text, consider how is language used? Why? i.e. are cultural words used? Is it from first or third person? You really need to look at the construction of the language, okay? Definitely look out for cultural words because you can see that direct link between language and culture there. What identities are being shaped? What is being said about these identities? How do we know that this is being said? Hint, hint, the language that's being used and the way it's being framed. How are whole communities or cultures being shaped? What is being said about these communities? How do you know this? Again, language. All right. Okay, so these are the different oh my gosh, different kind of buzzwords or like key things you need to look at in your essay. So your textual form, that's also a part of your language. So if you have a poem or a suite of poetry that you're looking at, if it's drama, if it's prose fiction, if it's a film, you need to be conscious of that use of language, aka why did your composer choose to write it through poetry or write about it through prose fiction or show it to us on screen via film. You need to look at the conventions of that form. So, for example, poetry uses rhyme, it might use iambic pentameter, it might use a lot of imagery, so that might help the composer deliver their message. Language structures, this can be the arrangement of the text. Some prose fiction novels have 3 parts, like they'll literally have like part 1, part 2, part 3. That might reflect the stages in the story. Language features, these are really our language devices. This is stuff we should all really know, metaphor, simile, all those ones that we know. Values, those are people's or culture's beliefs, principles, or ideas. And then attitudes are ways of thinking or feeling about something. Cool. Oh, all right. Oh, did I go back? No. All right. Language is constructed meaningfully. This meaning can represent identities and or culture. Okay, that's the link that I want you guys to make. You can also say that language is constructed meaningfully, and then that meaning can shape identities, culture. So it can represent them, and then it can also shape them. Please also don't forget about that. That's another thing that I want to talk about. Don't only talk about how your composer is representing an identity or a culture. Are they also having an effect on it? Are they shaping it? Yes, okay, they should. They must. The rubric's there for a reason, and Nessa selected these prescribed text for you for a reason. So your text really should be doing both of these things. You need to be clear and specific about this link. And these are your